All right, before y'all get too excited, this ain't new ranked gameplay. This is old footage I borrowed from beta content, like from when the game was, to me, at its littest. I borrowed it to show you what it looked like now versus then. I didn't want to make some new gameplay and talk about things that don't exist no more. I wanted to show you what it was like in the moments where it was at its best but still needed work. But we're gonna jump into this, man. So at launch, everybody called the game Bobblehead City. All the big channels, all the pros said it was just bobbleheads, just people dip dabbing and jiving all over the place. As you can see from this gameplay, I ain't juke jabbing and doing nothing that doesn't have a recourse or a reason. So I don't know what they was talking about. So just look at the forums. I mean, it was all over the forum sites. They begged the devs to step in and change it to make their opponents an easier target. Like, people literally were saying on the forums that they couldn't hit their opponents, and they wanted it to be easier to hit their opponents. Not like they were choosing the wrong strikes or falling for fakes or falling for feints. They wanted the opponent to be an easier target. And you could just imagine what happened. What happened was the devs stepped in and made hitting a player just easier. They gave them so many ways to make a player making hitting a player easier. They did everything they could to do it. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pause the gameplay, and I'm gonna put up on screen the things that I know about that they changed to make it the way they made it. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the list. They slowed down the speed of the head movements. That's point number one. The speed of the head movements were slowed down. Point number two, the strikes coming out of head movements were slowed down. They added an unrealistic debuff that was added to empty slips to lower the damage and remove stopping power. Stopping power in this game is the high damage based hit reactions that cause full body hit reaction animations. It was based on damage. They removed the recovery penalty if the strike before the pre-can combo was slipped to allow fighters to continue their combos uninterrupted. By doing that, they added a buff to accuracy, which is the auto tracking stat in the game, was granted to players as they threw a combination against a slipped opponent. So if through a pre-can combination and an opponent slipped the first strike, your accuracy stat basically kicked in while he was in his slip, and it would find his head. Then they gave the minor slips, they added minor slips to the game, which kind of gave back the old speed. Then they gave back evasions versus stationary hooks, because head hooks, they basically made it to where your head gains an additional range so that hooks from the punching range would miss, because there are only like 2 or 3 ranges. So the punching range is already 2 ranges, and then they gave your head movement was already 1, so they gave it like 1.5. So now you get out of the way of stationary hooks. Then they removed the evasion from the lead body hook, lead uppercut, because people were spamming the body hook and uppercut. So they removed that evasion altogether to make it easier to hit the people as they came in for lead hooks to the body, because the lead hook to the body is slower than the rear uppercut, or the lead uppercut for that matter. So it's an unfair trade now. It wasn't before. Before you had evasion on one side and versus versus straight strikes, and versus the hook on the far side but not on the lead side. So it was more complex originally with the evasion, but now it's very dumbed down. It's just, you see a lead hook, you throw an uppercut, you counter it. Then they added a stamina tax to head movement, current stamina, which is the stamina bar you currently are working from, and then the max bar, which is the overall bar that breaks down over time. And then they lowered the stamina drain from body strikes for the same reason for the body hooks. At launch, there was a great risk for entering the pocket unintelligibly against a counter-striking combination fighter, mainly because most players didn't know how busted recovery was yet. It still hasn't changed, but if you go back and watch my old videos, I wasn't getting caught in the blender if I whiffed, because I knew recovery was jacked up. I would just hold block after any strike, single strike or a string of strikes, and I would just exit the pocket safely. That still works today, but seeing a bull charging player dashing forward with hooks used to get countered by a duck off the first punch and then the uppercut to start off a combination. And because of the counter bonus added with the vulnerability of them, being mid-strike, it was rewarding. To me, that felt fair. You missed a strike, you got hit, and that's how it should work. You missed, you got hit with a combo. That's how it works in better games. Like in any fighting game that is very mechanically sound, that's how it works. You miss, you get hit, and the game shouldn't have to protect you from yourself, basically. If I had my way, I would make changes to this game. Of course, it wouldn't happen. Maybe in this game it wouldn't happen, but if I had my way, I would make changes that force players to make better decisions overall, and that would improve the cleanliness and order of striking, and maybe the game as a whole, but striking mainly is my focus. I'm gonna read off that list to you. That list is really big. I'm gonna put it on screen, but I'm pretty sure you ain't gonna be able to read it on screen. So not only will I put it on screen, but I'm gonna put that list of changes in the video details so you can see it on the channel and read the read my sketchy writing of what it is. All right, so let's start with point 1. Rework recovery to block and recovery to movement to be closer in line to how the animation ends. On kicks, the block can start when both feet are back on the ground, and movement can start when the animation is completely finished. Point 2, lower the stamina penalty for minor lunges to make them more commonly used. Players don't really use them because they cost too much. Like, they cost way too much. Point 3, add a slow drip of stamina loss to all walking in general. People say they want stimulation, that's simulation. Would also like to see that for maintaining neutral grappling positions, both on the ground and standing, for both players, as well as from submission positions. People say they want sim, but they don't really want sim. They say they want it, but they don't really want it. Point number 4, fix the ranges to match the player's walking animation. So walking into range is exact. You know, walking from one step to the next is an exact range. I talked about that a little bit in my last discussion video. If you were paying attention, I showed that when you walk to get into the farthest kick range, taking 4 steps away from your opponent puts you half a step away from where the kick will actually land, which shouldn't be the case. I should be able to step back 4 steps and still be at the range, at the optimal kicking range. It should be 1-to-1. That's the range. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. You know, you should be stepping from range to range and not like halfway in and out of those ranges. Let's go on to the next point. Decrease the range on hooks, uppercuts, overhands, on stationary as well as moving by 1 range so that the jabs and straights don't trade with hooks. The way the game works currently, jabs and straights have the same range as hooks and uppercuts. So they trade. They shouldn't. A jab is long, it shouldn't trade with a hook. Even if the hook animation is long, it shouldn't. That shouldn't be a thing. Like, in real life, there are some guys who throw long slapping hooks at the end of their reach. Yeah, that's cool. That should be a move. That should be something different. That shouldn't be your standard hook. That should be a special hook. You know, R1, L1 hook throws a long hook. You know what I'm saying? That hook reaches, but that hook can't combo to like a 4-hit combo. You know what I'm saying? Like, it should be a reason for why the hook is longer. Otherwise, the hook shouldn't be as long as the jab or the straight. It shouldn't trade. Let's go on to the next point. Add frames to jabs and straights from the inside so that they're slower than hooks and uppercuts. Currently, if you stand real close and throw jabs and straights, the framework for the jabs and straights from close are about the same as like from a distance. They're not really all that effective up close, but people still use them because they're there. So if it was cleaner, like if they were too slow to be used in that situation, people would opt to throw hooks in that situation. They would just be able to make a better decision. Because a lot of guys get KO'd in this game because they'll throw a jab from minor ranges, like real close, and get hit with an uppercut. And they're like, why did I get rocked? My jab landed first. Well, your jab shouldn't have landed. It should have been too slow from that range. It should have been basically useless. Instead of doing what Undisputed did, where replacing the jab with a hook in that situation, it'd probably just be easier just to make it slower, so that it just doesn't work in the situation. So you can see what happened, what went wrong, and make a better decision next time. I would add, for my next point, I would add frames to all moving strikes based on the amount of ranges they're attempting to cover, i.e. moving from head kick range 2, say like a head kick moving is like 33 frames according to the document for welterweight fighters. It's 33 frames. But if you're moving from range 2, it's still 33 frames. So in my proposed idea, if you're going from short range, it's 33 frames. If you're going from max range, it's 40 frames. They add frames based on the range that it's trying to cover. If it's coming from the farthest range, it should take the longest to get to the target, but it currently doesn't. I showed that in my last video. I showed that if you throw it from a distance, it's just as fast as if you throw it from close range. And I threw it versus the stationary, and it was still pretty close. So if you haven't seen that part, go back and rewatch that video. It's pretty early in it. I put them side by side. I linked them close enough to where the character was just starting the animation. I linked the animations, and you can barely tell the difference between max range and standing right up on somebody. That shouldn't be a thing. It should be increasing as they get further away. For my next point, block moving strikes from range within stationary versus stationary ranges versus like reach. Basically, standing hook range attempting a forward moving body kick, the input should throw the stationary strike. So like if you're standing from the range where your body hook will land stationary, you shouldn't be able to throw it moving forward. Because in reality, why would you be trying to move forward if you're already at the range where you can land it? It doesn't make any logical sense that you would throw a moving strike at a range where you don't have to move, unless your opponent is already in motion to get away from you, in which case that's fine. But if you're currently standing in the range and your opponent's standing in the range, you shouldn't be able to throw a moving strike to move past the opponent. That would be something I would take out altogether. I would make it just block it, to where if you try to throw a forward moving straight while your opponent is straight punch range, your character will just throw the stationary straight. But if you try to throw a forward moving straight, and your opponent was in that range, but he starts to move when he sees the straight, then your fighter will actually move to them if they've already like completed a step that gets them out of that range. Otherwise, you will throw the strike planted, because in reality, if you don't know your opponent's getting ready to hop out of the way, you're not gonna hop with him. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Like, life is not like that. Like, you don't magnetically fling to your opponent just because he was moving away the exact moment you decided to move forward. It doesn't work like that. Let's move to the next point. I would remove the accuracy stat mechanic of autonomously tracking the head. Like that stat, I would take that out of the game. Remove the accuracy stat mechanic of autonomously tracking the position of the target fighter based on the player stats from the game. So poor strike selection and incorrect timing isn't rewarded. Currently it is. Currently it's perfectly rewarded to just have poor strike selection. Just throw whatever you want to throw. If you throw it in a combination and your opponent slips, your strike will find him. So don't even worry about it. You're good. And that shouldn't be a thing. That's how it is currently. I don't agree. My next point is I would add evasion to all strike animations, to whatever side the fighter's head is moving offline. So if you're throwing like the lead body hook was originally at launch, it was evasive to the lead uppercut, it was evasive to jabs and straights, but it wasn't evasive. It shouldn't be evasive to rear uppercuts or knees. Well, not really knees, but rear uppercuts, or like if you try to throw a body hook or something, it shouldn't be evasive to that. So basically, go through all the strike animations, and any animation where the character's head moves offline, I would add a touch of evasion to the side that their head should be harder to hit from, so that it's less likely that they get hit on that side of their head or that side of the target as they're throwing a strike from that place where they shouldn't be reached, basically. So like, you're throwing a straight punch, your shoulder covers your chin on the right side of your straight punch if you're right-handed. So that side should be less likely to get you hit right on the chin, because your shoulder is creating an evasion point. So add evasion to that shoulder or to that side of the face. That way the strike, if somebody throws a hook, there's a higher chance of it sliding past the shoulder as opposed to just landing flush against your head. So, and I would do that for every strike. Just go through the whole game, and just every strike where the character is in a position where they're no longer easy a target, add evasion to the side to make the game play that way. So it looks natural, feels natural. Like if you duck under a head kick with a body straight, the way it works currently is the head kick doesn't find you. If he throws a head kick and you throw a body straight at the same time, the head kick goes right over you. That's how it should be. I do it a couple times in the fight versus Nate Diaz that's in this video. So you'll see that there. Let's go ahead and move on to the next point. I would add hold up, man. I think that's the same point. All right, cool. So next point is I would add evasion to all side moving strikes so that they safely land versus straight strikes, and they would straight strikes or any strike that would force the fighter to cross his body to try to make contact. I would give evasion to the side that the fighter's going so that it can create angles like Lomachenko. Because currently, if I throw a straight and you throw a side moving hook, if I throw it at the same time and I have a high accuracy stat, my fighter will punch you right in the face. Even though you step to the side, my straight punch will turn to you and hit you as you step. That shouldn't be the way it is. If there's moving strikes that move in different directions, those moving strikes should create angles. They don't currently. They're just slightly faster than the forward moving versions. So if someone throws a forward moving rear hook at you and you throw a side moving lead hook at them, or a side hook moving lead hook that's moving you away from their power side, that lead hook will hit them first. That's cool, but if they're throwing a stationary straight hook and a stationary straight punch, and you throw that same lead hook that steps you across their straight punch, it should step you across their straight punch and the straight punch should miss. That's how I think it should work. Side moving should create angles. It doesn't currently. Let's go to the next point. I would add stopping power to jabs. Jabs currently have no stopping power, and that is just not true. That is just not how jabs work. If I jab anybody in the face right now, it is going to force them to stop. They are not going to bulldoze through that jab. They're going to take it on the face. They might throw a punch through it, but they're not going to be as successful if that jab hits. The way the game works currently, if I throw a jab and you throw a straight punch lead hook combination, I come out of it on the worst end. Your straight punch hits me at the end of my jab, deals me more damage and puts me in a hit reaction, and it makes me an easier target for your lead hook to come through, putting me in block stun, or putting me in like hit recovery. So there's a less chance of me actually getting my block back up if your straight punch lands during my jab, because my jab has no stopping power, it has no authority. Now the dashing jab in the game, like the little ducking jab, it has the correct stopping power for what a jab should have, maybe a little bit too much, to be honest, but a jab versus an opponent not slipping, not blocking, not sidestepping should stop them in their tracks. It should. Just look at Andrade versus Rose. Anytime Rose jabbed her, Andrade stopped moving altogether. It just completely blocked her up. Log jam. She didn't get the bull rush to none of Rose's strikes because Rose was leading everything with a jab until, of course, the end. But that's the point for a different day. I would add more stats. My next point is add more stats to split up stuff like power. So power is not just general. Power should be split to punching power, kicking power, strength. Strength should be grappling strength. That should be physical, like your physical on the ground strength, like Paul Harris. Like the ability to pick somebody up should be based on strength, not it's just a general blanket term power. Same thing for speed. Striking speed should be separated. Maybe even separated further than just punching speed and kicking speed. Maybe separated down to left hand speed, right hand speed, or right hook speed, left hook speed, right uppercut speed. More stats is better overall for the game to be more of a simulation, because Anthony Pettis throwing a jab straight is fast, but is it as fast as, I don't know, Floyd Mayweather throwing a jab straight? Just throwing somebody out there like what's his name, let's say, who doesn't throw hooks, who doesn't throw straight punches? Jessica Andrade throwing a jab straight, should it be as effective as Rose throwing a jab straight? Rose's jab straight speed should be faster than Andrade's jab straight speed, but Andrade's lead hook to rear hook body combination should be faster than Rose's lead hook body combinations. So more stats could create that diversity. My next point is remove perks. Perks, especially the perks that have random chances. Remove all perks from the game, because that's just added meta on top of meta on top of meta on top of meta. It's just too much stuff. It's supposed to be a fighting game. It's not Call of Duty. You don't need quiet steps so they don't notice you coming. It should just be a fighting game. And being a fighting game, if it has to be a fighting game with stats, let the stats be the differentiation between people. You don't need all that extra stuff, all the variable chances. For my next point, I would add more. Wait, I think I read that one already. Did I? Oh, I didn't. I skipped a point. I actually skipped a point, moved around. My next point is remove the move level system, or rework the move level system to affect the strength of the strike based on the level and give it a better animation to represent the strength as well. So move level, like low leg kick 1 shouldn't look good. Shouldn't hurt much, shouldn't feel good. It should be bad. Leg kick level 3 should look like it hurt, should deal more damage than leg kick 1 and 2. And leg kick level 5 should be the best looking animation, the strongest looking animation, and it should hit the hardest. But it shouldn't have an added bonus of using less stamina, because that's just double buffing. I talked about that in my last video. It shouldn't be there. Rework move levels to basically be an indication of strength or an indication of skill. A cleaner jab should be a higher move level. A crappier jab should be a lower move level. And in cases where like you have people who have Nate Diaz's jab, put 5 versions of Nate Diaz's jab in the game. One that looks good and one that looks good, one that looks slightly good, like, you know, decent, one that looks kind of bad, and one that looks trash, and then one that looks real trash, but it's the same animation, but just done with less snap, less vigor, less body movement. You know, animate it to make it represent how effective it is, and use that and add on a bonus of it being more effective, instead of it just being like this double buff situation. Just so rework that system altogether. Let's go to the next point. Prioritize frame rate over environmental fidelity. Once the fight starts, there should be only the crowd that you can see animating, or just even in the arena, because video games are video games. It's data, and eventually there's a logjam in data. If you put too many files in a video session while you're editing, eventually it's going to overload your CPU, and it's going to make it hard for you to render that video. Same thing works like that for everything. If you overload your master bus on a recording session with tons of plugins, stuff that's not even necessarily running at the time, it's going to overload your system, and eventually there becomes a point of diminishing returns. And I think that point has been reached with UFC. That's why the game isn't 60 FPS online. You might think it is, but it isn't. Check the community manager's page on Instagram, or was it Operation Sports Forum? One of their community managers said that the game the render thread is 60, but the actual the actual play thread is 30 for online matches. It was said by one of the guys who is a community manager for the game. You can check it yourself, fact check him. He's been around the community for a really long time. I have it on good evidence that he's been around for a really long time, and he has a place with the development cycle. He knows more than he should know. He lets on that he knows more than he should know. Either way, prioritize frame rate over visual fidelity. There's like a billion screens in the environment. Trust me. There's like, when you see any commercial that shows Joe Rogan, like the animation of Joe Rogan, several of the trailers have shown behind Joe Rogan, his screens are animating. That leads me to believe that screens all over the place are animating. It just leads me to believe that anytime you see the Jumbotron, it's actually animating, because you do see it every now and again in cutscenes and walkouts. You see the Jumbotron and stuff. If it's animating, if anything is animating, if anything that you can't see is animating, it shouldn't be. Take that out. Improve visual fidelity. Decrease the visual fidelity while you can't see things, so that the actual fighting isn't affected by that. Because I know there's no way it's not actually creating a logjam. There's no way. It just has to. Let's go on to the next point. Remove block break minigame from the game and bring back the arm damage system from UFC 2, but make improvements to it. The block break in this game is a minigame. It's Mario Party. It's a minigame. I hit your hands 3 times from the front, then your hands come to the bull guard. That means my hooks and uppercuts work. Or my head kick or whatever. I gotta hit your hands 3 times. Or if I'm throwing hooks, I throw 3 hooks and then your hands kind of open and I throw a straight punch down the middle. I don't even think that works, to be honest. I don't even think that works. But if that is how it works, where you throw 3 hooks on the hands and then a straight punch down the middle, okay, that's kind of cool. But either way, I think that the arm damage system from the first game, from UFC 2, was more practical. If somebody kept blocking jabs over and over and over, they kept blocking jabs, eventually their arms couldn't take the punch hitting their forearm anymore, so the jab would do damage to them because they just couldn't take it anymore. And same thing worked, but it was like way too general in that game. So like if your arms were damaged, you couldn't block anything. It shouldn't be that general. That's why I said make improvements to it. Like I said, if the jab broke your arms down, maybe the part of your wrist that would be blocking the jab can no longer block jabs as effectively, so the bleed through damage gets increased. And then like just basically like that, like systematically make that more improved, because your arms being a part of your body and being a physical element in the fight should be a factor, and currently it's not. It's just a mini game. Your block always recovers. You can't depreciate the block to the point where it no longer recovers, especially not before your stamina runs out. Your block will always have the same amount of strength at any point in the fight, even when you're at your worst. So do with that what you will. The block break system, that mini games got to go. Put that arm damage back in, make it more practical, and just make the game more of a simulation. That arm damage was definitely closer to simulation than what we currently have. Next point, speed up all body punch stationaries, moving out of sways, moving forward. Speed up all body punches to be more in line with the standing version of the punch. I can tell you right now, my straight punch to the body is not that much slower than my straight punch to the head in any situation. But in this game, your straight punch to the body is drastically slower. And it's to make way for the uppercut being the counter to it. Because people didn't want to get hit in the body when the game first came out, because body warriors like me were just brutalizing people. So the developers decided to step in, slow down all the animation to the body, and just make them useless. Like the sway hook to the body, like if you sway to the outside, throw a lead hook, it is the slowest punch in your animation arsenal. The characters can walk out of frame. I showed that in my last video. Characters can walk out of frame before you ever get that punch off. It shouldn't be the case, man. If I see you throwing a lead uppercut, I step to the outside of that lead uppercut and I throw a hook. You should not be able to get out of the way of that hook before I get that punch off. My punch should be faster, but one, the recovery, you shouldn't be able to recover that fast where you're actually walking. That's another thing, but I talked about that already. But the punches themselves, the animations and the framework for them are so slow that they're basically not usable. Even if the game was fixed and the recovery was the way I want it to be, those strikes still wouldn't work, because the recovery wouldn't be the problem. It would just be the speed of the strike in itself. So rework all those frames for those body strikes. It's just unusable at this point. For my last point, I would make limb damage affect strike speed and damage, as well as affect the way that you physically animate over time. Limb damage is really crucial to making this game a simulation, and it's currently not. With the block break situation, switching over to a mini game instead of your arms having effect, redo all that. Make the limbs damage affect your fighters' ability to punch hard, ability to punch fast, for kicks, and make it change their ability to walk away, make it change the way they walk, make it change the effectiveness of their kicks, make it change how high they can lift their legs. And the same thing can go for body damage as well. Like improve the body damage so you can increase the visual fidelity and the believability of the world that you're trying to create. Make those changes so that the game looks more like a simulation. I feel like I'm more in line with a simulation when I'm playing WCW Revenge, because if somebody's body hurts in Revenge, they hold their body, they hold their stomach, you know, their hands on their stomach, they walk kind of weird. Every time they get hit to the body, they make a different audio cue than they did before. Same thing goes for their leg. When their legs are hurt, their moveset is dampered, like they can't throw kicks. Sometimes on one of the newer wrestling games, like I think it was No Mercy, if your body was hurt, you couldn't get like big slams on heavier people anymore. You couldn't pick bigger people up anymore when your body was hurt. Like increasing the visual fidelity for, I mean, not just the visual fidelity, but the status, the effective status of every situation would make the game more of a simulation than people are really even thinking about. Just think of it like this. If somebody's been jabbing your forearm all day and they hurt your forearm, now you can't block anymore on that forearm, but you also don't really want to land hooks with it, because that would put your arm in a situation where it's hitting, you know, it's jarring the hook. So your hooks might come out a little different. You might be throwing them a little slower, or just holding your arms up, blocking too long in general. It makes your shoulders tired. But let's not do it like that. Let's base that off damage. But say your arms are damaged and now your shoulders are technically tired. You can't lift your block as fast. You can't punch as fast. You can't hit as hard. You know, things like that. Like that would increase the realism and the believability of the world that the game is trying to create. So with that said, that's the end of the video. That's all I have to say. That's all my points. You can read through them in the comment, like in the detail section. If you want to talk to me about them or help me further the cause, drop that in the conversation. You know, drop a comment, because I respond to pretty much all my comments. And if it's a conversation, I start these pieces. Like these videos are done as conversation pieces. The idea is that you hear what I say, you either agree or disagree, and then we talk about it and we try to figure out what parts of it you like and don't like. You know, we have a conversation, talk about the game, because I care about this game in a way that nobody else can. And I care about this game for more than anybody is willing to believe. When I go back and rewatch my old footage of the game and watch my old knockdowns, old knockouts, the way the game worked, I die. Like I'm dying, like I'm laughing, I'm having a good time. I watched so many of my old fights to gather the video to make this video, and I was just loving it. I was watching knockdowns, I was watching KOs, and I was just like having a ball. I don't have that feeling when I play the game right now. If I pick it up right now, I don't have that feeling. I'm not having a ball. Like I'm barely hanging on. But when I played it back then, I was having a good ass time. I can't even lie. I was having a good ass time. I would drop people when they would go for spin kicks. I hit them with it straight to the body and make them fall over my body. And it was just a good time. Like it was a good time. And I want that for the game. I want the game to be fun and enjoyable, but also have a level of respect and competitive integrity, and also be balanced and understandable, comprehensible. Like whenever they first started making changes, I would go to throw an uppercut lead hook straight, and somebody would throw a straight uppercut, and the straight would hit me as my uppercut hit, and their combo would win the trade. And it's like, we're standing at uppercut range. Why is a straight punch beating me at uppercut range? Your punch, you shouldn't even be able to generate enough force to hit me from that distance. We're standing a foot away. You have a 3-foot arm. How the hell you gonna take a 3-foot arm, unless you put it behind your head like a kid in a schoolyard, and then threw that bitch forward as hard as you could? There's no way your straight punch should have hit me harder than my uppercut hit you. But because your straight punch is slightly faster than my uppercut, even from the range where my uppercut should win, your straight punch put me in vulnerability, so your hook hit me harder, and my uppercut lost all of its power because it was hit after. Like that's a part of the meta. That's actually a thing. If a punch lands and then the second punch lands from the other person, the second punch has less stopping power than the first punch that landed. The first punch takes priority, and that's a thing. That's actually the mechanic of the game. Like the punch that lands first takes priority. But because your straight punch shouldn't be landing from there, it's taking priority in the situation where it shouldn't, and you're winning the trade when you shouldn't win the trade. My uppercut should have beat your straight punch because you threw it too close to me. You were way too close, but that wasn't the case. Like, and so when they started making changes, things like that started becoming more obvious and more prevalent, and that just kind of ruined the experience. But until next time, Brian, the Apex Gamer Channel. Hope you learned something. As always, that's always my goal. Hope you learned something. Hope you had a good time. And if you let me know if you like the comment, man, like the content. And like I said in the last video, if you want people to see it, if you want it to reach the developers, if you want it to reach the bigger people so they have a conversation about it as well, they throw in their 2 cents and we all just kind of work together. You gotta share, you gotta like the video. You gotta do stuff like the video, you gotta share the video, or else no one sees it. It helps the channel to be visible. It doesn't help me monetarily. Like I can tell you for a fact, I haven't made that much money on this channel. Not enough to where I can say it's a job. I do this because I love the game that I do it for, and I love making content, and I have fun making videos and laughing and sharing those fun times. Everybody remembers when they were at their friend's house playing a video game and just laughing their asses off. YouTube gives you a way to take that fun time, record that fun time, and show it to 1 million other people. You were having a good time, maybe 1 million other people will watch it and all have a good time. That's what YouTube as a gaming platform gives you the opportunity to do. I've been recording gameplay since I was maybe 11 years old with a VHR plugged into the back of plug my console into the VCR, plug the VCR into the TV, and record video gameplay of me and my little brother playing whatever game we were playing, whether it was wrestling, Perfect Dark, 007. We would record our gameplay, go back and rewatch it. We would have matches in the wrestling game and then go back and watch them like it was a real event. Like that was a real thing. I've been capturing gameplay since I can remember. That's always been my thing. But YouTube gives you a way to capture that moment and put it out there for other people to enjoy as well. And that's what I want to do the most of. So until next time, peace out, guys.